Welcome to Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're also on Dash Radio every single weeknight on their Nothing But Net channel, and that is free. That's at 7 p.m. Also, check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel, the Dono Daily, every single day at noon. I'll be debuting my show next week, starting at 9 a.m. a couple days a week. So more details on that to come, but make sure that you're subscribing to the YouTube channel. You get all of our content. Even tonight, as we speak, the Hurricanes guys and Dolphins guys are doing their streams. Also, check out fivereasonsports.com. Lots of new content there every day. No paywall like the newspapers. And also, we're going to be referencing the story from there that our guy Brady Hawk wrote about Tyler Herro. You can read the story there on the site at fivereasonsports.com. Also, check out one of our great sponsors. This is one of our recurring sponsors. So many of our sponsors are local. They're Miami sports fans. Please support them as they support us. But this is a great company. U-Brake Wheel Fix, a wheel repair and remanufacturing company with over 20 years of experience, specializing in complete wheel repair. They repair wheels from curb rash, bends, and cracks. They also specialize in refinishing, from polishing, machining, and custom colors that will suit your car's needs. Yes, they still do the Vice colors, even if the Heat don't. They also do the Dolphins colors. Lastly, U-Brake Wheel Fix offers a full array of factory and custom wheel and tire applications. So contact them at 305. This is a Miami company. 305-748-0112. Yes, I do venture down there sometimes. 305-748-0112. They're right there in the Miami Shores area, or at U-Brake Wheel Fix on all social platforms. Say hi to our guy Mark. Talk some Dolphins and Heat with him. And now, tonight's episode.
Yeah. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Five on the Floor. Voice is not, it's never great, never perfect, but it's a little worse than usual tonight. So I'm going to let my guys carry a little bit more than usual. The floor plan, I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. You can follow Greg Sylvander at Greg Sylvander. Odd that he actually uses his name. We're going to work on Alex with that here going forward a little bit. But what we're going to talk about tonight, and I teased this today, it got the expected reaction, although I will say I didn't do this on purpose. So I guess Tyler Herro thinks I did. I simply tweeted out tonight's topic, Tyler Herro. And, everybody starts reacting on Twitter because he's become, for one reason or another, probably the most polarizing Heat player. And I'm not sure it's really all his fault. So that's something we're going to talk about tonight. Tyler noticed it because he liked the tweet when somebody responded that we were going for likes by basically tweeting it out that way. So if you're listening, we apologize. That was not the intention. Okay. But basically what we're going to get into tonight is Brady wrote a really good article about the way that Tyler, maybe in the same role he was in last season, at least for the last three quarters of the season coming off the bench, but maybe used a little differently. But also Greg's got some background on some of the workouts that Tyler has been doing. We will get into that as well. But I want to start here. When I was speaking to some people inside the Heat organization over the past week, I was pretty much told this: we may go as far as Tyler takes us. And that does not mean he's their best player, but it means that he's their most variable player. I think they know what they're going to get from Jimmy Butler. Obviously, Bam Adebayo needs to take another step. And then Kyle Lowry, I think, if healthy, PJ Tucker, they have a body of work. You know what they're going to be. And then they've got some summer league guys who may get some opportunities, whether it's Strus or Vincent or Yurtseven. But we have no idea how they're going to perform when given bigger roles. Tyler Herro is variable in the sense that we've seen it. We've seen him perform at the highest level. We saw him score 37 points in an Eastern Conference Finals game. We also saw him struggle at times last year, not have quite the same flourishes that he had the year before, but the numbers actually on a per minute basis were about the same. And so I feel like the narrative on him has swung too much, where maybe he was overhyped early and then I would say to a certain extent distrusted too much now. And we might have played into that a little bit because I'd heard some things behind the scenes, about some frustration with focus. I reported those things. And then also, I didn't anticipate that he would actually be back with the team this season because I was told there's a high likelihood that he would be traded. But he is here. He is going to be counted on to a large degree to anchor their bench, at least at the start of the season. So, Greg, I'll go to you. I think we've both heard encouraging things about his work. I don't care what's on an IG video or anything like that. I care about what people are saying about the way that a guy is approaching his craft, because that's what matters to the team. But you've heard good things about that and the way that there may have been some adjustments made.
For sure. First, before we even dive into that, let's acknowledge that this is flu game Ethan Skolnick, and he's having to, rally around the team. So we shall carry you to victory somehow here. But Tyler Herro, just from a Heat fan perspective, it's been such a weird ride with him because I feel like it was like love at first sight, and the fan base just adored everything he did. And there was an electricity in the building that was different when he was doing what he was doing. And you're right. Like expectations changed everything. Last year was weird. Right. And for all the reasons you stated, I went into this it was an afterthought to think that Tyler was going to be back. Like I really kind of was operating under that assumption, and maybe that was obviously a false one. But it's cool that he's going to be back because he felt like the player that was going to stick. I felt like he was one of those guys like Bam Adebayo that was like buying into what they were doing here. And when I hear kind of what's been going on this summer, I get even more encouraged. Like I've been hearing he's been doing 2-a-days, working out in the mornings with Quinny, which, that's huge for him to stay close to the coaching staff throughout the summer, doing a ton of ball screen work, using his body to attack, like really working on that kind of stuff to really build his craft. That stuff is really encouraging to hear him working on. They're entirely, make no mistake about it, planning on featuring him in the second unit. He will be a player that they depend on there. But, just when I hear him working on, mid-post work, finishing, that he's noticeably stronger. I've heard that he's even pulling off dunks that you don't normally see. So when sources are telling me that kind of stuff that are close to the hoops, it's cool. Like, you know what I mean? So I hope that he can bring that, because we saw the 6-man into the year odds, and I liked his odds, Ethan.
25-1, actually, I think at Bet Online, which was interesting because actually Goran Dragic and Kendrick Nunn have better odds. We don't even know where Goran Dragic is playing next season, although we think it's going to end up being Dallas. Or if it's going to play at all. Kendrick Nunn 20-1 going out to LA, and yet Tyler Herro, who's basically been handed the Heat bench. I mean, we can talk about Max Strus, and we did on the last podcast, and there's high hopes there, but again, he's never done it at the level that Herro's done it. And there really isn't anybody else on that bench that they can count on for consistent scoring. So, I mean, Tyler's going to come off. He'll probably play quite a bit with at least one or two of the starters. But I want to get to that, Alex, before we get into Brady's article and how he might be used differently. The biggest thing I heard last year when we talked about focus was they really wanted him to get in the weight room. Like that was the number. I think when we talk about focus, people started thinking about the off the court stuff, and it wasn't really that. It was they wanted him to commit, and I heard this from numerous people inside the organization. They wanted him to commit to the work on his body more so than anything else. I don't think there's a question whether he's a gym rat or not, but they wanted him to get physically stronger. He looks physically stronger. And Greg's reporting that he's pulling off things of a physically stronger player. How will that change things for him this year, Alex?
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because the one time that I've been around a player as a media guy over the past year and a half was around Tyler around a month ago or so, when he had that availability at the Heat camp with all those kids there. Me and a bunch of other media members just, around Tyler, just flabbergasted that we're able to get the opportunity to be around somebody at this time. And he was talking about in that, appearance, how he had put on 4 or 5 pounds already over the summer, and how he was planning to, he was aiming for around 12 total, I believe is what he said at the time. So, and as far as like how it would help him on the court, I think there's so many ways it would help him. First, on defense, right? Like, not that it would turn him into a good defender, but the fact that he already has a short wingspan, something that's been talked about and joked about, ever since he's been drafted. Like, it's just it's a disadvantage. And Kelly Olynyk learned that. And it's just kind of been part of his career and why he's been kind of a subpar rebounder, rim protector, as far as, comparative to other bigs, right? And I think that Tyler, if like you're trying to kind of compensate for some of the disadvantages with the strength stuff, I think like you can't have guys just going through you. And I think we saw him and Kendrick and Goran all kind of take turns being the worst defender on the Heat over the past 3 seasons. So it's good that, the burden is on him now as far as being that microwave scorer off the bench, whereas before there was, like Brady said, more guys to do that. And I think it's really going to be it concerns me a little bit, but I think Tyler is ready for this role. And I'm expecting even more development from him skill-wise, because the strength is going to help him get to the hoop a little bit easier. I think it's going to help him get to his shot a little bit easier, where guys just kind of going over screens, maybe it won't nudge him as much. Like, I just think like maybe like he's the type of guy who gets knocked off his position a lot, I think, in the NBA. And so gaining strength can only help him, I think.
Well, the other thing about it, if you look at last year, a couple of disadvantages that he had to deal with. One, of course, was an extremely short offseason. Sometimes guys will play a second summer league. Tyler played one, played deep into the playoffs, obviously, into the finals, and had, the second shortest break in NBA history behind the team that they lost to in the finals, the Lakers. So no real opportunity. But then also, I think in what a lot, of the folks I've talked to have acknowledged was a mistake, they put too much on his plate early. And I don't mean giving him more responsibility in terms of more minutes or potentially more shots, but giving him different kind of responsibilities than he had the first year without the chance to really acclimate, and so.
Is it fair to say that they expected him to step up into what Goran was the season before as kind of like that third guy? And that's why they started him off that way.
I think so. I think that a lot of it, though, was, again, you can talk about the fact that you don't need a true point guard. Okay. And he liked to talk about being positionless and all this, but then they kind of pushed Herro into trying to be that as a starter. He wasn't really a secondary ball handler for those first few games. And the other part about it was, and again, this they didn't plan for and they couldn't have expected, was the rest of the starting lineup around him cratered.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I mean, because they started the first game with Mo Harkless, and then they went to Myers Leonard, and then a bunch of guys got hurt. Right. I mean, so he wasn't playing.
That context matters for sure when you're talking about Tyler and his performance. And look, by the way, I didn't say this before, but he is a solid positional defender as far as knowing where to be on defense. So I think he's like, for example, if you want to compare him to other guys who are on the team, I think that's one thing he's better at than like Kendrick Nunn at, right? As far as like navigating screens and just kind of being in the right spot at the right time. And I know we kind of said that about Duncan, but Duncan just has the superior measurables and is stronger than Tyler too. So like Tyler is there mentally as a player. Like he knows how to read the game, I think, to a solid degree on both ends for a young guy. So I think him just growing into that role and literally growing into his body, like, and especially with what we know about what they did with the roster this season, where like it's a lot more defensive oriented, even though you did add a Kyle Lowry. Like I think he knows that it's on him now.
We're going to get into the Kyle Lowry thing in a second because I do think that's a big impact. But the first thing I want to say before we do is that it feels like what they're doing this offseason is clearing a path for him, which I was told was one of the reasons they didn't re-sign Kendrick Nunn, but also simplifying things for him. It's going to be very clear what his role is, whereas last year I don't feel that it was clear. And so I think that really hurt him early in the season. And then, look, a player who relies on his confidence, which we've seen he does, gets yanked out of the starting lineup. There's going to be an adjustment to that. And we also saw that his game took off a little bit after the trade deadline passed. So, I mean, I think all of these things, whether mentally, emotionally, they're factors.
And the injuries too.
And the injuries which he suffered too. So, I mean, again, when you said these things last year, they sounded like excuses. I don't know if he's going to lift off this year, but I do think that he has less going against him going into this season than he did last season. And I think what Greg is talking about, the types of workouts he's doing, the commitment to the workouts, is encouraging because he's giving himself the best opportunity. All right, we're going to talk about the Lowry factor here and some of the things in Brady's article. But before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. If you need IT, you got to reach out to our guys over at CPT of South Florida. Reach out to TJ. I know it's a lot of initials. CPT of South Florida, been providing small and medium businesses with the technology they need for decades. They specialize in cloud-hosted phone systems and managed IT. If you own a small or medium business, you're looking to save money on your monthly phone and internet costs, you got to give TJ a call right now. He's been helping South Florida businesses save thousands per month. He can do the same for you. We're going to have TJ on an upcoming episode here as well. With a cloud phone system, you can work from anywhere on any device. For a free in-person consultation, call TJ at 954-966-2766. Again, that's 954-966-2766. CPT of South Florida has got a great new promotion, 25% off cloud phone service, including free phones and the first 2 months of service free. Deal with an owner, not a sales rep. Give TJ a call at CPT at 954-966-2766, 954-966-2766, or visit the website at cpt-florida.com. The other thing that Tyler Herro didn't really have last year was a point guard to get him in the right position. We saw the catch and shoot numbers decline. The overall shooting numbers declined. He had
a little bit less than I thought when I read Brady's article. It was still like it went from like 43 or 44 to 39 as far as. Yeah, I'm like 39% on catch and shoot is still pretty good.
It got worse. I mean, the key thing is
but everything else got better, and I think that Brady got into that a little bit.
All right, so basically, he was playing with Dragic a lot. Obviously, the previous season, this season, he comes in and he gets moved to the bench to play with Goran. We saw obviously none move in the starting lineup at one point. Oladipo was supposed to move into the starting lineup, but the Lowry factor, playing with a point guard who's going to allow him to just float. We can talk about Herro, sort of manning the bench, but he's not going to, we talked about the rotation. He's not going to play with 4 other bench guys all the time. He's going to play some with Jimmy. He's going to play a lot with Lowry. He's going to play some with Bam. I think the one guy he won't play a whole lot with is Duncan. I feel like there'll be some interchangeability there, but I do feel like they're looking at the 2 spot, if you consider Duncan a 2, as kind of 48 minutes with maybe a little bit more for each of them playing with others. But I think that they're going to split a lot of that time this year. But the Lowry factor, Greg, how much will it help?
It's huge. I feel like there's a couple things. One, as much as I love Goran, and you guys know, like, especially during the bubble run, I was saying he's the best point guard in Heat history. And I might still stand by that. I don't know. The Tim Hardaway thing is still kind of nudging at my gut. So I don't know if I'm going to go there, but he doesn't draw the same attention as Kyle Lowry does. It's just different. Kyle Lowry, when you talk about, as a shooter, straight up, like, teams just they measure him differently, and I just think he's going to be able to find Tyler and get Tyler in his spots in ways that Goran that wasn't his game. You know what I mean? So I think having a real distributor like that, we remember when Tyler was like part of every closing lineup, like we couldn't believe how much Spoelstra was trusting him. Didn't he play like most fourth quarters, like all the minutes?
He pretty much played every minute. Yeah.
It was more like the regular season right before the bubble run, if I remember
correct.
correctly.
Yeah. So like, I don't think it's crazy to say, Ethan, I think you're onto something with Duncan and Tyler being interchangeable, and you could see Tyler close games. And I'm really interested to see what Kyle can do to not only like get the attention off of Tyler, but find him in his spots. I just feel like it's a perfect fit.
That's an interesting question, Alex. Who do you think closes more games of the 2 of them?
That is a good question.
Duncan or Tyler?
I would still lean Duncan, but really it's interesting because this season is going to be a little different. And I know you brought this up many times before in the pod, where Spo will always like to lean towards having more shot creators / playmakers on the floor in closing time. But we've seen Duncan be the more impactful guy. That's why he got paid the big bucks. So I just think like I agree. The interchangeability is going to matter there, whereas we know that what Duncan is better at than Tyler. We know that Tyler's better at than Duncan. And they're going to have the option there. But the difference is now they've got Lowry there. So it's like I think you can feel better about throwing Duncan out there knowing that you have someone else who is just such a high-level playmaker. And, again, all love to Goran and what he did here for all those years. But Lowry is just a higher-level playmaker than him. And he's better at pushing the pace, better at getting guys into their spots, better at pick and roll offense for the most part. I think Goran was pretty much just better at getting to the rim, but that was his main thing. That was like his thing was getting to the rim and going from there until he developed that step back over the past couple of seasons. Whereas Lowry's kind of just got every little aspect of his game and counters on top of counters. I think that's the kind of guy that's going to really help Tyler get into his game, not only, just like what he does on the floor, but mentally. And then, by the way, Victor Oladipo is going to come back at some point. We don't know how good he's going to look, but if he looks good at all, that's only going to take some pressure off of Tyler to be doing everything off the bench too. And it's going to take pressure off of their, some of the guys that are going to get a lot of big minutes there.
I mean, would you be surprised to see Kyle setting ball screens for Tyler? Like, that's the kind of stuff we didn't see Goran doing. You know what I mean? So, like, there's just different elements that he can unlock. And I'm excited.
Kyle's a great screener.
Yep.
How similar can Tyler's game be to what Fred VanVleet's game was? Because obviously we saw Lowry and VanVleet close a lot of games together. Is there anything we can take from the way he played with him?
Well, we know that Lowry Lowry functions at his best in a movement offense where even though he's the point guard and he's the one initiating the stuff and kind of pushing the pace there, getting guys into their spots, like I said, like I think he functions well in movement-based offense. I think Tyler is probably at his best when he's coming off of screens and stuff like that rather than having to handle high pick and roll like we've talked about in the past. But also the difference between VanVleet and Tyler, as we know, was just the defensive factor. Even though VanVleet was small and Lowry's kind of small too, both were bulky enough to be, I think, positive defenders. And we're both really good defenders on that Raptors team where they just had like 9 A+ defenders in their rotation or A defenders. I mean, again, I think Tyler's a smart player on defense. It's just different, But I do think there's plenty of potential for them to play together. And by the way, for them to be different types of lineups where you may see Jimmy at the 4, Duncan at the 3, Tyler at the 2, Kyle at the 1 with Bam, like different variations like that. They can go small, they can go big, and Tyler's going to factor into all these different lineups. So yeah, I could see him closing, and he's just going to be a big part of this rotation no matter what.
But you've talked a lot about the idea of, that there were too many players that could be hunted last year. I mean, there were times you put 3 guys on the floor that teams could hunt. That's not really going to be the case this year, right? No. I mean, you're not hunting Bam. You're not hunting Jimmy. You're not hunting PJ Tucker.
No.
Not hunting Kyle.
You're not hunting Kyle. So
it's Tyler and Duncan, but you're going to be able to hide them in ways you just couldn't with the.
Go ahead and hunt Duncan, by the way, because I trust him at this point. Like and by the way, I don't have the numbers on me right now, but somebody did post those numbers about Duncan defending ISOs and
yeah. He's being paid to be trusted, Alex.
But the other part of it, though, and the reason, you know what I think is going to happen a lot, whether he's gotten better defensively or not, there's going to be a lot of games where Duncan Robinson picks up his second foul 6 minutes in, and Tyler comes off the bench. I just feel like that's
a problem.
But I feel like that's where we're headed here because until Duncan can kind of clean up some of that early foul stuff, you're going to see Tyler earlier in games playing with Kyle from the very start until Kyle gets his break, and then Tyler kind of runs offense. All right, you mentioned Oladipo. There's 2 things I want to get into that are more future-oriented, looking ahead to like 2022 and beyond. We will do that in a second. Before we do, tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at prizepicks.com. Make sure you use that code 5. Just taped a Prize Picks show for today. We're going through every division in the NFL, looking at our best prop picks coming up for this season. Go over or under on rushing yards, passing yards, receiving yards, whatever it is you want to do. It's a lot of fun to play. And here's the thing. If you use the code 5, that's FIVE at prizepicks.com, you will get a matching bonus. So it's basically free money. So go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5. It is legal in Florida. That's right, for now. So make sure that you play while you got the chance. Go to prizepicks.com. Use the code 5, FIVE. You can play anything you want. Again, the NBA is not going on right now, but NFL preseason, you can play MLB, you can play MMA, you can play just about anything that's going on in sports right now. Go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5. Sorry, 2 more things I want to get to here. We mentioned Oladipo. This is one of those things that I think will be interesting to monitor because let's say Tyler Herro gets in a great rhythm off the bench. Let's say you get past the trade deadline and Tyler's still here and he's anchoring the bench. He's averaging 28 to 32 minutes a game. He's averaging 17 or 18 points a game. He's a leading candidate for 6th man of the year. I don't think any of that is ludicrous by any means. I think it's very possible for him, depending on the way that he's used. And then Oladipo comes back. You got a guy who's been a multi-time All-Star. We don't, and you assume if he comes back, he's coming back because he's healthy, or he's healthy enough to contribute significantly. How does that change the dynamic, Greg? If it becomes, because you're not moving either of them into the starting lineup unless Lowry or Robinson or Butler is hurt, right? So they're going to have to play together. What does that look like?
Well, first let's address like because I think you bring up a good question. Like, Tyler's, manning that bench unit, and it's his unit, and he's kind of taken that and embraced it. Depot's coming back. People want to see what Depot's bringing. Obviously, historically, Oladipo in the last few years has been a really good player. So you want that. But Victor Oladipo is on a minimum contract, so he's going to have to wait his turn, and he will slot in as a ninth man, and he can take Max Strus's minutes, and that's where that's going to start, and we can then ascend from there. And there will be no further conversation about it. I don't think that he's in the position to demand as if he would come in and be an immediate six man. So I think that would get cleaned up by virtue of just that Herro's playing as well as he is. How it fits, that's a much better question. Alex is probably more equipped to go at it from a basketball sense, but I get the sense that if Tyler is playing well enough and Spoelstra is trusting him in high leverage situations and things are panning out, they're not going to mess with that. So whatever this looks like, whatever it ends up being, it'll be, advantageous for Tyler, I think, because that'll be what's working for the team.
Alex, how does it fit? How do the two of them look together?
I mean, obviously everything is going to be dependent on Vic's health, and we've seen them be conservative of getting guys back onto the floor in the past several different times, and then once they actually get back into the rotation, they kind of work them up slowly, and I expect that to be the case with Victor, given everything we know about his injury history, right? And knowing that this team is built for the playoffs, I think there's going to kind of be a pacing to the season with a lot of these guys, and Victor's included in that. And as far as like the basketball fit, I think it's a pretty clean fit. I mean, if you're going to have Victor anywhere, something close to what he was for the Heat last season, coming off the bench with Tyler, with a guy like Dedmon, obviously we talked about staggering, but without even getting into the staggering, just having like multiple guys you feel good about there. And I think always having multiple playmakers on the floor, Victor takes away the rim pressure aspect and taking the pressure off of Tyler to attack the rim a little bit, because I think that was part of the problem last season where I think, and I said this a lot, that I wanted him shooting a little bit more from three, because I just think he's better playing outside in, even though I respect that he wants to be a three-level scorer. So I think Victor would only ease Tyler's game, where it's like, he doesn't have to worry so much about being that three-level guy. He can just play off of Victor's rim pressure.
It's funny that it's like the reoccurring theme that you're taking pressure off Tyler so that he can do what he does best. And I like
same on defense, by the way, that
in theory, things are being simplified, because like, make no mistake about it. Like, there's another element of this from a team building perspective. And let me just preface this by saying, I like this team and I like how the team is built. And I am not throwing everyone in the trade machine today, but it would be really, really, really positive for the organization if Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson got off to great starts this season. That's all I'll say. So I think that maybe it would be
Tucker too.
PJ Tucker too. Yes, exactly. But especially those young guys that have, years ahead of them to get better and to look good. So I just think also there's an element of this that as they are building up and kind of pooling together their assets, they need certain guys to pop, and Herro and Duncan are two of them.
All right. Well, I'll close then, because you bring up where I was going to go, which is it's this tough, kind of situation that you're always in with a team that's trying to win championships, which the Heat obviously are, and that's the goal, which is that it's that balance between trying to get young players to play to a certain level, but knowing that if they do, they could be moved. Okay. And how that affects the player on their way to that level. Because we saw last year that Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson clearly were affected by the trade conversation. Their numbers jumped as soon as the trade deadline passed. So if we're going to be talking about
COVID, that's COVID protocol stuff.
Well, that too. But if we're going to talk about this in the context of, the two of them, and what they can become. And we're going to be doing this all year because we're saying what they could become so they can be traded. I wonder if that noise, not just from us, but from others, from Twitter, from all these other places that obviously, they engage in. Okay. I mean, like, again, Tyler liked the tweet about, about us talking about it.
Tyler's never going to like a tweet again after this.
Okay.
I thought all the players were on IG. I thought the Twitter was lame.
Well, they are, but they bounce back and forth. But again, my point is, if I could finish it, my point is, both of you guys, my point is that it's going to be a tough situation this year because every time that they play well, we're going to hear about how they could be traded for this guy or that guy, or Beal's unhappy or Lillard's unhappy or whatever. I don't feel like either of them, I'm including Duncan in this, are ever going to be able to flourish for the sake of flourishing for the Miami Heat. Okay. I mean, I'll let both of you jump in on this now, but isn't this going to be the narrative all year, Greg? Kind of what you tapped into there. Like if Tyler does become what they want him to become, people are going to be throwing him into the trade machine.
I mean, it'll be relying upon certain guys becoming available because I don't think everyone's throwing them in the trade machine for just everybody. I mean, there's a few people I could maybe hunt down that would be throwing them in the trade machine for random folks. But for the most part, I think everyone knows that it's those top shelf guys. And if they became available, but also ones that make sense, because like now that you've invested in Kyle, I just think that there's also certain players that you may wait for that fit better with Kyle here. Cause I think that matters now. So like Bradley Beal is just like one obvious example. If he becomes available, they're going to have to deal with that noise. I don't know what else to say. I mean, as professionals, that's something that you just have to deal with. And, but you bring up a good point. If you always feel like you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door, like that kind of stuff, I guess the organization is going to have to make some sort of commitment to those guys and let them know and be transparent as to what's taking place, because that's the only way that they're going to be able to play with any, peace of mind. Right.
Well, they made the financial commitment to Duncan. I mean, so that's been made, but for Tyler, they haven't had to make that commitment yet. Right. So I feel that's why I feel like he's
part of the reason he's still there. Right.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. That is part of the reason, right? But we've also said not only is he potentially, a player who could pop for them to help them win this year, but he is their best asset. I mean, we can't separate those two things. I mean, it's the nature of this organization. They're not going to settle. I mean, and so I'll finish here and I'll let you close it, Alex. What level does Tyler Herro have to get to where the noise stops completely? Is there even a level? I mean, if he's averaging 19 off the bench and he's top 3 for 6th man of the year, will we stop hearing about him being in the trade machine? No.
And this is going to be linked to what I was thinking, and Leif was kind of going into it there for a second too. I couldn't agree more as far as, the fact of the matter is that this is all just noise, including us, especially us being, what we do, right? Like we're putting out multiple shows a week. We're talking about guys for content. This is what the people want. And we try to be fair. Like we try to be fair and kind of go through both sides on guys. And I understand that like sometimes it feels like we've come at Tyler hard, whether it's talking about his defense or kind of insisting that maybe, he'll be the guy traded. And as far as like Heat fans, they're always going to want him traded in the sense that if he keeps giving them more and more value, like, that's going to be the guy that gets thrown in. Obviously, it wouldn't be just him. It'll be a million other things, all the picks and pick swaps and stuff like that. But it's so obvious that it's just stuff that he's got to deal with as a professional, like Leif was alluding to there. I think it's stuff that it's like, hey, even if he were to get traded to one of those situations right now, let's say Portland, Washington, if that were to ever happen, like he would end up getting paid by one of those teams. There's almost no doubt about it because they would be rebuilding. And all of a sudden he's just like, there could be worse scenarios, man. And I understand like that's kind of a cynical way to look at things, but I just think like that's part of the business of the league. And Leif is saying it in the Zoom chat here that team success is going to be the thing that kills the noise. And I understand that too, because that noise was gone during the bubble, right? Like we weren't really talking about trading Tyler like that, but it's also like that spectacular finals run, right? Yep. If they're not in the finals, I don't know. I don't think that noise is just going to die out for Tyler. I think it's just something that he's going to be dealing with.
I think to a certain degree, Tyler is a victim of his own early success. I feel
but
like
it's not his fault.
Everything we're talking about here is a result of him outperforming in his rookie season on the big stage, and he's to be credited for that. But it raised expectations to a certain level with the fans and to a certain degree inside the organization, where they gave him more responsibility because they expected more. That backfired for a lot of reasons, as we said, some of which were beyond
shot creator until this, until now, because they expected more from him there.
Some of which were beyond his control. And now you're in a situation where, yeah, I mean, it's like he's kind of damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. If he doesn't perform at a high level, he's going to hear it from the fans. If he does perform at a high level, he becomes an even better trade chip for them going forward. I look at this in a lot of ways as an audition season for Tyler Herro. He's auditioning to be part of the Heat's future, and he's also auditioning to be maybe a top level scorer for other teams around the league at the same time. Right? I mean, I think it's both.
Hey, 6th man of the year. That's a huge
honestly, when I saw that number today at 25-1, I said that's kind of tempting. There's no reason he can't do what Jordan Clarkson did. I'm sorry. I think he's a better player than Jordan Clarkson.
That's top 5 now that there's Goran is not there, Kendrick's not there.
They don't have anybody else.
6th man.
They don't have
Oladipo gone until February or whatever. He's gonna be the 6th man for a long time.
All right, check out all of our sponsors, cpt-florida.com, ubreakwheelfix.com, prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. I will try to get my voice better. This is not the Jordan flu game, I promise.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.